Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Nick Dyson, and on this channel we talk about leadership and Christian leadership. So, been doing a study on leadership principles or lessons from the book of Nehemiah. You can go check out that playlist on my channel. This is the final video of the series, so please do go and review that. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed the series, or if it's your first video of the series, be sure to let me know what you think down below. So, in most of these videos, we've talked about Nehemiah and things Nehemiah has done well, or things Nehemiah has done that's shown great leadership. Well, the last topic we're going to talk about is what happens when a leader does not create a legacy. So Nehemiah is a man. He's not perfect, and he did not handle everything perfectly. He handled things very well. But there's actually one area of leadership specifically that Nehemiah actually fell short in. And it's something that really is kind of a sad thing when we look at it. But for us, it is a great lesson. We can look at it and see the importance of creating legacy. And so Nehemiah, when we think about this, and I kind of high level summarize this in most videos, but he was a servant for another king. God gave him a burden to rebuild the walls. He's come, he's rebuilt them. Now he's dedicated them back to God. They've reestablished worship. Ezra the prophet is around. The priests, the Levites, everything is back in order, and the people have entered back into a covenant with God. But when we come to the end of the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah has now returned to this foreign king where he served, just as he promised. He did exactly what he said he would do, is that he would go and help rebuild the walls, and then he would return. He had that burden for his people, but he was not going to leave his post. So massive kudos to Nehemiah for holding true and not bailing on what he said he would do. But when we come to chapter number 13, and I'm going to reference a few verses from my Bible that's here in front of me. But Nehemiah did not build up other leaders around him. He empowered other people to do other tasks, and he gave them permission to lead in their respective areas. But there's one specific area that he did not create another leader or help develop somebody, and that was for his role and his position. So what happens in chapter number 13 is Nehemiah has gone back and he is returning back to Jerusalem. He wants to kind of review the walls and see how things are going. But we see that in the first 9 verses, we see that the people have compromised. They've started to fall away from God because they don't have that strong core leadership that they had while Nehemiah was there. In verses 10 through 14, we see that there's some financial troubles. We see that in the next several verses after that, they've gone away from their worship and their faith the way they were supposed to. And we see this throughout chapter number 13, where it's just section after section where they have fallen away and fallen down from the great leadership that they have. So here's a thought before I get into talking about legacy. Any church, any business, any organization is only one leader, one pastor, one CEO away from completely falling apart. One pastor can destroy a church. One CEO can ruin a business. One new ownership change can destroy the legacy of a business if you are not careful. It could even be a situation where maybe it's a small business or small church or something. There's one pastor that's poured their heart and soul into what they're doing, and for whatever reason, the pastor that follows, or the business owner, the manager, whoever it is that follows, does not hold those same values. And because those values are dropped, that commitment is dropped, and that consistency is dropped, you start to see things dwindle. That does happen. I've seen it firsthand. You probably know of some examples and instances where that's happened as well. So how do we stop this from happening? How do we, as leaders, how do we stop this gap of legacy happening? Well, it's all about teaching others about leadership. Teaching others what you do, why you do it, why it's important, why your core values are what they are. Teaching the legacy, passing it on to the generations that are to come, so that they understand the importance. I've heard the phrase, and I'll probably quote it slightly wrong, but you hear where it's what one generation tolerates, the next generation accepts. And so if a leader just accepts things as the status quo or tolerates things as the status quo and does not pass on what he knows, the next generation is going to come behind and they are not going to know how to effectively lead whatever organization, church, business, whatever it is. So you have to be willing to invest into those other people, to train them, to develop them, to share with them skills and knowledge, wisdom, lessons learned, any of those things that you can pass along to help them be better for their organization, better in their life, better for their families, better for their church, whatever the connection is. Nehemiah in this, sadly, he did not develop a leader to follow in his footsteps. He did not develop somebody and explain to them the burden of what he did and why he did what he did and the importance of keeping people on the right track and the way to lead them effectively. He didn't do any of those. And so when they left, the people started to backslide. The people started to turn away from it. And it didn't take long in that instance because they were relatively new in the region. They were just returning. They had a lot of practices they picked up from other places. They needed good, strong, core leadership. And Nehemiah had to return back to where he was. And it could be that you are a type of leader, you're only going to be with a church, a business, or some organization for a season, a set period of time. Maybe it's you're filling in as a pastor. Maybe you already know your career is going to pull you a different way. Maybe it's a contract or a temporary assignment. What can you do to add value to whatever organization you're part of and to leave them better than when you found them, but also leave them in a position where they can carry on and proceed with what you were doing? If you do not leave a way that things can carry on, things can proceed, things can continue to improve, then from a leadership perspective, you've dropped the ball. One of the core things, and it's my favorite thing to talk about leadership, is legacy and that pouring into people, teaching them what you know. Because if you are not willing to pass along and share what you know, your abilities, your gifts, your talents, what you're called to do, all of that ends when you leave. That's such a heavy weight to bear when you take all the responsibility, all the weight, all the importance, everything on yourself, and you do not pass it on to someone else. So that's my challenge for you. In this topic, in this lesson, this final video, if you get nothing else from leadership in Nehemiah, take what you know, the lessons you've learned, the important core values you have, the importance of putting God first, self-reflecting, praying, seeking insight, all of the lessons that I've talked about. Take whatever speaks to you, but most importantly, take from this lesson, take from this video, the importance of legacy. And I remember there was a catchphrase years ago on a set of TV commercials that was pass it on. I forget what organization it was, but I remember they used that as kind of a slogan or a motto, pass it on. That should be the motto that leaders have and that you should have as you are desiring to do more leadership and to follow in leadership is to pass it on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Are you passing it along? Are you following in legacy, or do you want to create a legacy? Let me know down below, and look for new videos talking about leadership and Christian leadership coming in the future. I'll see you in the next one.